Tonight on the program, Canada joins the European Union only to have its membership revoked after Brussels realises it's not geographically a part of Europe. China threatens to invade Brazil over a shortage of cheap soybeans and vegetable oil. Could this be New Zealand's strategy for gaining leverage over Australia? Good evening, I'm Troy Lansing. In January 2025, shortly after being sworn in for a second term, US President Donald Trump casually proposed that Canada join the United States. The response from Ottawa was swift. No. As Canadian nationalism surged, many began to question whether the country should look elsewhere for allies, economically, culturally, and militarily. By the summer of 2025, as trade tensions intensified, a new proposal emerged. Canada would not simply align itself with the European Union, but join it. The EU, still recovering from Brexit, responded in what analysts have described as a rebound. On September 1st, 2025, Canada was welcomed as the 28th member of the European Union. But by March 2026, many in Brussels realised there was a problem. Canada is in North America. On March 23, 2026, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen reportedly picked up the phone and informed Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney that his nation was out. Nothing personal, she said. You're in North America. Prime Minister Carney was reportedly in distress following the call. Later that day, as millions of Canadians prepared for visa-free travel to Europe, he addressed the nation, stating, quote, "We won't be going on a permanent holiday to Spain. We won't be going to France, and don't even think about getting on a plane to Germany." So, how did this honeymoon turn into a divorce proceeding? Let's find out. April 2025. As the tariff war escalated, many Canadians began to feel their neighbour to the south was acting erratically. Riding on a wave of nationalism and a desire to diversify, Prime Minister Mark Carney, who had recently taken over from Justin Trudeau, unveiled a bold plan to keep Canada Canadian. In the lead-up to the federal election, his proposal was simple. If Canada wishes to remain independent and keep its economy growing, flowing inflation and COVID-19, it must join the European Union. While some experts welcomed the proposal from an economic standpoint, others questioned whether EU membership would, in fact, keep Canada Canadian. We spoke to one expert.
If there's one thing Canadians hate more than a fucking moose crashing in their car, it's more red tape.
The last thing we need is more rules and regulations. You keep adding red tape in Ottawa, and Quebec and Alberta will finally have a reason to succeed.
In the weeks leading up to the election, Carney and his Liberal Party campaigned heavily in favour of EU membership. 1 week before the vote, Carney met with undecided voters in Montreal, highlighting the benefits of buying French wine and cheese. Benefits, he said, only possible with EU membership. He then travelled to the oil fields of Alberta, telling workers at a rally in Fort McMurray, quote, "Germany has some sweet-ass machinery, better than the crap we manufacture." On election day, voters made their decision. Carney and the Liberals were returned with a thumping majority. By early August, Carney travelled to Brussels to meet European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Normally, a session to the European Union is a lengthy process, involving human rights checks, economic assessments, and democratic standards. In Canada's case, none of that was required. Following a rapid round of negotiations, Canada was formally admitted on September 1st, 2025. A traditional period, nicknamed the Elvis Clause due to its association with grace, was introduced. During this period, Canadians would be treated as EU citizens until March 1st, 2026, when full EU membership would become a reality. But 1 week before the grace period ended, disaster struck. A member of the European Parliament, Olof Minsk of Denmark's Smorgasbord Party, asked a simple question, quote, "Why are we admitting a North American country into a European bloc when it's not even in Europe?" At this point, Europe realised its mistake. Across Europe, the news triggered outrage, with protests reported in France, Germany, Poland, Ireland, Sweden, and Denmark, many expressing anger that they would no longer enjoy visa-free travel to Canada. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Canadians were devastated. In Vancouver, Edmonton, Saskatoon, Toronto, and Montreal, millions who had already exchanged their Canadian dollars for euros and begun planning their European holidays were left in tears. Many young men hoping to marry French or German women also affected. One couple told us they hadn't cried this hard since Canada lost the 2017 Ice Hockey Championship to Kenya. Others responded with anger, targeting Tim Hortons locations across the country. Many apologised shortly after. But some remain hopeful. Suggestions include relocating Canada to Europe or moving to Quebec and obtaining a French passport. But either way, I don't know. China's rise has often been described as an economic miracle, but with great power comes great responsibility. Feeding people. China's population now stands at over 5 billion people. And with billions of mouths to feed, the demand for protein remains a constant challenge. During a speech on February 23, 2026 at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, President Xi Jinping addressed members of the Chinese Communist Party with the following remarks. Quote, "We cannot forget our past. We cannot forget the millions who helped bring about Mao Zedong's dream. If we are to cement China's place in the world, we cannot do it on an empty stomach. All those in favour of running down to KFC to try the new Double Stacker Ultimate Deluxe $5 feed, which comes with your choice of drink and side, say aye." The resolution was met with universal approval and a 15-minute standing ovation. But if there's one thing China needs, apart from cheap, greasy chicken that makes you feel like crap but smells good, it's soybeans. Soybeans are cheap, plentiful, and only grow in certain climates. Following escalating trade tensions with the United States, China increasingly turned to Brazil as its primary supplier. However, following a new trade agreement between Brazil and Taiwan, that supply has come under threat. In response, China appears to be taking a page from the George W. Bush administration. It's time for a bit of freedom. Not because of a specific commodity, but because the people need change. Something the People's Liberation Army is reportedly prepared to provide. Brazil. 213.5 million people call it home. Apart from having the largest economy in South America, Brazil is also the world's largest producer of soybeans, over 180 million bushels a day. Since the 2010s, one country that has steadily increased its demand is China. A significant proportion of Brazil's soybean exports now go to China, primarily for animal feed, and in some cases, human consumption. Last year, statistics showed that over 500 million people in China drank soy milk. This year, that number has risen to 3 billion. But soybeans are not just for food. As China transitions towards renewable energy, it has begun developing a new type of vehicle, powered entirely by soybean oil. Government figures suggest that within 5 years, soy-powered vehicles will become a common sight across Chinese cities. Over 1 billion people are now believed to own both electric and soybean-powered cars. Many prefer the soy for the smell. With both countries members of BRICS and soy flowing freely, everything was going well. That was until Taiwan entered the picture. On November 12, 2025, Brazil and Taiwan signed a $1.6 billion trade deal, including 200 million bushels of soybeans bound for Taipei. Beijing was furious. After diplomatic pressure on Brasilia failed, China appears to have taken a page from the George W. Bush administration. The word? Invasion. Unlike the Bush administration, which cited weapons of mass destruction, Chinese officials have been more direct. On January 12, 2026, Foreign Minister Wang Yi stated, quote, "You better cut this crap with one of our breakaway provinces, or we're going George W. on your ass. 2003, Iraq style. You have until February 20th to comply." Brazil's Foreign Minister Mario Vieira responded, quote, "Bring it. We ain't scared of you." Now, what some are calling the soybean showdown may be approaching. Last night, BRICS diplomats met in Moscow for emergency talks, while a flotilla of Chinese naval vessels were seen crossing the Pacific and entering the Panama Canal. Brazil has since placed its forces on alert, with reservists being called up. So, will a war over soybeans break out? Experts say cooler heads are likely to prevail, and that a Chinese invasion of Brazil remains unlikely. But following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the prevailing view among diplomats is, Who the fuck knows what happens next? And just a quick update on our previous story. In the event that Chinese boots do land on Brazilian soil, we will be taking an in-depth look at how the People's Liberation Army plans to operate so far from home. We've also received reports that Venezuela and Cuba may allow Chinese access to military bases and facilities. Both countries are believed to have taken China's side in the dispute for reasons that remain unclear. Meanwhile, NATO is monitoring the situation, but has expressed no interest in becoming involved. The White House has also issued a statement stating, quote, "I wonder what's for dinner." Meanwhile, members of BRICS have called for restraint. However, we are now receiving conflicting reports that India may be secretly deploying armed divisions to support Brazil, while Russia is reportedly considering withdrawing 2 divisions from Ukraine, or what's left of them, to assist their Chinese counterparts. So, where does this leave BRICS? Uncertain. Or as one diplomat put it, BRICS is shitting bricks. Before we wrap things up, it's time for Just a Suggestion, the weekly segment where I offer my thoughts on global affairs, whether they're needed or not. Tonight, New Zealand, a potential vegetable oil superpower. As the world turns its attention to a possible conflict in South America, on the other side of the Pacific, one country is quietly attempting to transform itself into a regional power. As the global economy moves towards renewable energy, alternative fuels are gaining traction, including vehicles powered by vegetable oil. Vegetable oil is typically produced from crops such as canola, sunflower, and cottonseed, crops that are not widely grown in New Zealand. But if there's one thing New Zealand has, it's a can-do attitude and just enough land. At present, much of the region's supply comes from Australia, though in recent years, exports have increasingly been directed towards East Asia. However, following the escalation of global trade tensions, many farmers in the United States have found themselves with surplus supply and limited buyers. This presents an opportunity. By securing a trade agreement with the White House, New Zealand could import these crops at a reduced cost, refine them, and export vegetable oil to developing markets. Because, let's face it, everyone needs vegetable oil. Not just for cooking, but increasingly for driving. If New Zealand was to produce upwards of 400 barrels of vegetable oil per week, its GDP could rival that of Singapore. And as for Australia, let's just say, it won't be us making the jokes. Next week on the program, Operation Desert Fawn, Saudi Arabia's plan to annex Kuwait, and how Iraq is preparing to come to Kuwait's defense. NATO's blessing Poland and Lithuania seize Kaliningrad, split it into 2, and sell it on eBay for €500. And in Just a Suggestion, I outline how Scotland can survive independence by forming a loose Celtic union with the Republic of Ireland. If you're Scottish or Irish, you may be surprised. But for now, that has been Geopolitics Later. I'm your host, Troy Lansing. Until next week, good night.